So when these things first came out, they were not really terribly popular with physical therapists and stuff. The reason why is because people were kind of using them wrong. So you can use these to your advantage, and you can also use them to your disadvantage. So you want to be really careful when you do use these. A lot of people tend to think that the harder you go, the better it's going to be. And in some instances, it will be. So if you are struggling from an injury, you may not want to go quite as deep because you don't want to cause more irritation and inflammation in the muscle. As well as all of us are fairly lean. So sometimes, there's actually another one over here. Sometimes you get the really dense foam rollers. And what it will actually do, has anyone had a deep tissue massage before? So you know how afterwards you're pretty sore, the muscles feel pretty sore. The reason why is because what they've done is they've stripped the muscle. So if you go and you use something like this, which is fairly firm, or in comparison to something like this, which is really firm, you can end up stripping the muscle. So it's not something that you want to do. You don't want to use something like this, you know, half an hour before a really hard workout, or even something like this. So what I would suggest is using something with a little bit more give to it. You can actually pass these around so you can feel the difference. That way you're warming up the muscles and you're getting them ready to go. Let's start with, so for something like this, this is what you're going to use on your calf. You can just kind of start. Another big thing is most of the time people don't have purpose to the way they're doing it. So they come in and they're just like, all right, I'm doing my rolling and everything. There's not any purpose to that. So what you would really want to do, actually, let's just use this guy, is you want to start, and I usually like to go from my lower legs and up. You start, and you kind of just start on the you can either do the medial or lateral, and you just want to do like 2 inches, and then 1 inch, 2 inch, 1 inch, and just warm up the muscles. And then after your workout is when you want to go deeper. So you don't want to cause the muscles to go into kind of a spasm right before a big workout. And then you just move all the way up, and then after you've gone, you know, all the way through the muscle, you can actually then go in and do the longer strokes, I guess you could say. There's also different things you can do, like rotation. So for who struggles with calf, you had some calf issues. So the way you can start with this is just, you know, just kind of rotating, or even just sitting there. And you know, people that have to sit a lot, you know, if you're studying, you can just sit. And what I'll do sometimes is I'll sit and I'll just go like this and just keep those muscles moving, because when you exercise, you break down muscle, and then what can happen is scar tissue can be built up in place, and so then you get all this scar tissue. What happens with scar tissue doesn't do anything. It just keeps the muscles from being able to contract properly and to stretch fully. And so the idea with this is that if we can get that out of there, the muscles are going to function at a higher level. So you can start here with something like this. This is going to be a lot deeper. So for the leaner, less mass athletes, you don't want to necessarily go really deep with something like this. This is called the quad roller, because it's usually meant for bigger muscles. But you start here, and what you want to do is you kind of want to just 2 inches, 1 inch, 2 inches, 1 inch, 2 inches, 1 inch, all the way up to the insertion, and then all the way back down. And it should hurt pretty bad. Yeah. So here, then the IT band. So anyone have IT band syndrome? Okay. Do you guys know what the causes of IT band syndrome can be? Exactly, glutes, even the lower back as well. So you start here, you go all the way up. Problem is that's usually all that people do, is they just do the IT band, where a lot of the problem can be more so in here. So for the glute, what you would want to do is just, you can cross your legs and you kind of put on a little bit of stretch, and you just roll. And then what you can do is, and actually this guy is even better for it. Yeah, so you can take it and you just find those spots, and then you just rotate that leg in and out. Now, another thing that you can do with this guy, there's actually a bigger one now that they've come out with. It's probably like that big. You can get on your piriformis. So that's a muscle that most people completely, or not your piriformis, your psoas. Most people completely forget about that muscle, but in order to do this, you have to engage that. So cycling, what are you doing the entire time, running the entire time? So you can actually take this and get on the ground and just dig in, and it's going to feel pretty uncomfortable. Be careful with that one as well, because that's a really, organs are generally in this area. You can also do your pecs with this guy here, so you can do something like that, and then you can actually get into your back too. So you can just take it and get into your back. What I actually like to do with this one as well. Which one do you guys? Does anyone have a specific one Or do you guys just use
that one and that one?
That one, the black.
This one? Okay, so another thing that you can use, this one actually talked to the trigger point guy, and he said a lot, and I've done it before too, is you can use this as a roller as well. Be careful because that's like seriously deep, so you don't want to go, you know, digging in, but you can use that all along your spine as well as, I like to use it for my hamstrings because it really gets deep. And then the same thing with this guy here for the calf muscles. And don't forget about your anterior tibialis. A lot of people tend to do that, and that's the main muscle that usually gets pulled for shin splints. You're all always doing your calves, and you kind of forget about getting that guy. And the next thing you know, you've got some pretty brutal shin splints, as well as the inside. You don't want to forget about there. Yeah, peroneals. And that actually, what I like to do for the peroneals is kind of what I was doing with the calf. Basically, this can be a little tricky. You take it, that's why. You put it, you want to get some leverage. And then you just kind of rotate. You don't actually have to roll. All you have to do is just rotate that foot around, and you'll feel it start to stretch it out. So, and just small movements. And like I said, you don't want to go really deep right before a hard workout, but after a hard workout, you can do a lot more with it. So, questions?
What about using two? What about using two of the balls? Kim was actually showing me one where she was using.
Yeah, you can do that,
sides.
like on the like doing like we have them on the.
Yeah, she was
sides.
sideline, right?
Yeah, it's hard. It's difficult to do.
I think she had one on the ground.
Yeah.
She was using the other
Yeah,
one.
to do it. Yeah, so you can. It's kind of hard. I've never had any real success with it, but you can do something like that. You can also, if you really want to get deep, you can do the ball on your IT band as well. It's just all about your pain threshold. Some people can really handle it, and other people, it's it's pretty comfortable. Like Dylan, my brother, he just laughs the entire time he does it. So, but
Well, the more you do it, the easier it
it's
gets.
gonna get
So if somebody had, say, 10 minutes to roll themselves out.
I think the biggest difference between an elite athlete and a recreational athlete is the way you recover. And I think that elite athletes are going to be more likely to do stuff like this, where you go out on a Sunday afternoon, you do your 2-hour hard workout, and a recreational athlete is going to be like, oh, let's go get big steak omelet with a huge coffee, and then later on we're going to drink beer all night. And then an elite athlete, well, maybe Tracy would do that. I'm just kidding. An elite athlete, though, is going to, they're going to be the ones that do something like this. So I think that this is something that should be, in everyone's weekly, daily routine after every hard workout.
Yeah.
So, definitely.
I've become a big fan of using the cold pool after my hard runs.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can use this lightly when you're not warmed up before a workout, but
Yeah.
after, okay, so I do a hard run, come back home, foam roll, then go and get a cold pool, or do a hard
Yeah, you don't want to. Okay, so yeah, you don't want to do this on cold muscles. So I would say you're right in the way you're doing that. So go do your hard workout, come back, your muscle. Ideally, if you could just pop on them right after the workout, but I'm sure we're all driving and stuff, so you drive back to the house, jump on them, roll out, and then take your ice bath, because you don't want to do something like this right after you get out of the ice bath, because all your muscles have basically just gone and they've gotten a lot shorter. So.
And when you talk about, we get muscle adhesions and knots and stuff from hard training, would you say, it's, well, as soon as you finish your last interval, that's when those muscles start?
Now, this is just more something that occurs over time, and it occurs at certain junctures. They don't just like randomly appear. Now, they can with an injury or whatnot, but typically like one of the trigger points for IT band syndrome is right in the center of the leg. And I'll walk up to somebody and I'll say, does it? We can't see.
She's solid muscle.
And they'll go, whoa! And they're like, why does it hurt so much when you touch? Because that's where a trigger point forms in the IT band. You've probably had those muscle knots like right here in your trapezius. That's where they form there. And they just kind of form over time. So it's not necessarily like a traumatic thing right after a workout. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing I like to do is that if you find a trigger point like that, so say you do find one on your IT band, what they do say is if you hold, so if you're on the foam roller, if you hold it on that spot until it releases by about 70%, then you can kind of roll over it and it helps kind of flush that.
And if you think that unknotting there, all of a sudden you have more muscle, you have more flexibility, and you have more strength. You know, when that releases.
Now, the part that you pointed to, you know, yeah, I mean, I kind of always have something there, but I also feel like, well, muscles do cross over each other and they have to cross the bone. So, is there a good way to identify like what knot is supposed to be, or what fold in your muscle is supposed to be there?
I don't have a really great answer for that. The knots are pretty, like the one I have in my, it's like you can feel it right there. It's not a muscle crossing over. It's a knot in the belly of that muscle.
So I guess, in other words, if you roll it and it becomes less pronounced.
Are you talking about like the tone of the muscle? Like if you look at a person's legs and you see like the tone of the different muscles? Is that
well, he was talking about like, you know, how you have different muscles that are crossing over, moving over.
Yeah.
Sometimes those muscles can, they can actually kind of melt together for adhere, for a lack of a better term. Yeah. And that reduces function as well. And you know, that getting into soft tissue a little bit, you know, and that's one of the benefits of ART. Is they actually get in there and do work on that. And this is where, you know, the art of medicine and the science kind of cross. Because if you go to an orthopedist, they're going to prescribe a drug, they're going to prescribe physical therapy, or they're going to do surgery. That's pretty much their big three. There's not a whole lot of intervention as far as getting in there. But now, if they send you to physical therapy and they're doing dry needling or ART, they're actually getting in there and restoring function to those muscles. So that's why the hands-on, you know, therapy is so important, and that comes down to the practitioner. You know, you can have somebody that does ART that's got really weak hands, that doesn't really have good hands, or you can go to somebody like, you know, Sadri, who's been doing it for a long time and really understands the body, and that's the art of it. You know, they can actually get in there and feel those and get that muscle functioning again. And it's usually very painful.
Yeah, exactly. So, cool. Well, that's all I really have, unless there's questions or something.
I got a question. What about using compression in conjunction with that? Compression tights or sleeves or calf
on top, like while you're doing it, or just like in general?
While you're doing it.
I haven't really heard anything in terms of like research on that. I think compression is always something that's good if you're a person that's either sitting for, you know, like some of us are students, so if you're sitting for a long time or you're standing on your feet, because it's just going to help with venous return. And it's going to, you know, it may be a mental thing, you know, in terms of the research. There's never been any studies that have said, like, this 100% works. But I think that, you know, for me, it helps my legs feel fresher at the end of, you know, if I go from a morning workout and then I'm working on my feet for 10 hours and then I get home and I have to do, you know, something else. It's nice to be able to take that off and be like, oh, okay, you know, things kind of feel, and it helps with proprioception as well. So if you're wearing it on runs, like you have, you know, a calf strain or something, the compression helps keep that muscle from vibrating. So with the shin splints, I don't know if you used any compression sleeves. That might have been something that helps you. So for this season, if you find that you're getting those shin splints again, you know, they've got the CEP compression socks. But what that helps, it reduces muscle vibration. So every time you take a step, there's a vibration that goes through your leg, and so the lower portion, especially in that shin, so that anterior tibialis, which is that muscle, that fleshy part right there, vibrates off that bone, and that's why you get that nice either burning or sharp stabbing pain right in the front of your shin. And it goes the same thing all the way up. And if you get the legs, it's the same thing if you're running in those. It just reduces that muscle vibration, which some studies have shown that it does actually improve performance, but I don't know if any of us are going to go and race a triathlon.
Well, a lot of people do, though. And
Yeah.
So. If I could just say just a couple words on the recovery pumps. If you guys that are out of town, if you've never gotten one of those, have you? We got a room set up next door now in the recovery lounge, and there's 2 of them that we keep over there all the time. So if you get a chance this weekend, get in there, 10, 15, 20, 30, 45 minutes. You will find they're very relaxing. I know Dennis has, I think, fallen asleep in those. It is pretty funny how even when we get these type A's in here that are always so keyed up, after about 15 minutes, we'll go back there and they're out cold. So what the recovery pumps do, and there's no real panaceas when it comes to recovery. All methods really do is attempt to move blood, and there's just better methods of doing that. When he's getting in the cold pool, what it's doing is it's constricting. okay, and that moves blood. And then if you get into hot, it dilates and that moves blood. So if you're alternating hot and cold, what are you doing? You're moving blood. The way veins work, arteries, you got a heart. You got a heart that's pumping. It's a really, really strong pump. So that's what's moving your blood through your arteries. There's nothing that pumps blood through veins. Veins work as one-way valves, and they work through movement. And a lot of that venous return comes from the calves. So when we move around and do recovery workouts, it's pumping blood through those calves up into the body. When you're moving blood, what are you doing in terms of recovery?
More oxygen.
More oxygen. What else? You're moving waste, pumping in nutrients. You know, that's the whole process of recovery. So that's why you use recovery slips, because they're putting pressure on the muscle. You move, it's moving a little bit more blood. What the recovery pumps do is it's pneumatic. It starts at your feet and it's squeezing your legs like a tube of toothpaste. And it does that every 1 minute, over and over and over. So 45 minutes in those, they